Hello boys, hello girls, hello babes. Welcome back to the Jenaya Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. And we would like to invite you, if you haven't already done so, to please subscribe to our podcast if you do like the show. We are available across all major podcast platforms, so you can hit that subscribe button anywhere. That's including on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts, even on iHeartRadio. So basically anywhere that you get your podcasts from, you can find us on there and you can hit that subscribe button. And hey, leave us a review if you feel so inclined as well, as those reviews really help to get the name of our show out there. Every little bit helps, and we appreciate every little bit so much. And you know what? If you do leave me a nice review, it will make me feel good. It will cheer me up, which is something that I need today, as this is going to be quite a somber show, probably the most somber show that I have done since I started this podcast. And I mean, I am going to try to keep the energy up, but at the very least, it is going to have a somber undertone. That's unavoidable at this point, rather. Can't even talk. I'm so rattled. As I'm sure we all have heard by now, the awful news. Nicklas Backstrom, longtime assistant captain of your Washington Capitals, Stanley Cup champion, and the second longest tenured DC athlete of all time, behind only Caps captain Alex Ovechkin. He announced yesterday in a joint statement with the Capitals organization that he would be taking an indefinite leave of absence from the team due to injury. And I think we can all probably see the writing on the wall here, as you don't usually see a joint statement being released when a player is just injured, but they're going to come back at some point. Then you don't usually see that, right? So this, to me, from the statements that were released to the press by the Capitals organization and by Nicklas Backstrom himself, this to me sounds like a retirement announcement is just around the corner. And that's also the feeling that I got when I listened to the Capitals players' interviews yesterday as well, when they were talking about it, is that in all likelihood, this is going to be it for Nicklas Backstrom. He is not going to be back. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, you know what? That flat out sucks. It really does. This news really hit me hard, because obviously, been a diehard Washington Capitals fan for a very long time. I've been watching and cheering for Nicklas Backstrom for his entire career. He has obviously given us so many great memories. In fact, I think for many of us, he's probably been responsible for, or at least involved in some capacity in a lot of our best memories as Washington Capitals fans. He's not been just a member of, but really a pillar of this franchise for the past 17 years. He's been, not just a member of, but a leader of, like I said, an assistant captain of this team for well over a decade now. And so he has been not just a member of, but a leader of, and one of the very best players on many of the very best versions of this team that the franchise has ever seen, has ever had. Countless division titles, President's trophies, and of course the Stanley Cup. It has been one hell of a ride, hasn't it? We have been really spoiled these past 2 decades here, and Backstrom has been a really big part of that. Other than obviously Alex Ovechkin, Backstrom's been the face of this franchise along with Ovechkin. And really, if you think about it, those two are the reason why we have been so spoiled as fans over these past 2 decades, because of their loyalty, the fact that even though they were 2 of the very best players in the entire league, in the entire world, they could have gone to play absolutely anywhere that they wanted to, and yet they chose to stay right here for their entire careers. They never would even entertain the idea of leaving Washington, of playing anywhere else for any other team. And so this really sucks, you guys, for all of those reasons that I just mentioned, and really for so many more as well. But you know what? If I were to list all of the reasons why this totally sucks, we would be here literally all night, folks. So what we do know right now, as of right now, is that how this all kind of went down is that Backstrom spoke to the trainers, to General Manager Brian McClellan, and to head coach Spencer Carberry on Monday. And he let them know that at least for now, again, we don't know for sure that this is a retirement entirely per se. I'm just saying that we can probably read the writing on the wall here, because that's definitely what this sounds like. It sounds like that's where this is headed, unfortunately. But what we do know for now, for sure, is that he spoke to the trainers, to McClellan and to Carberry, and he let them know that at least for now, he can't continue on like this due to his ongoing injury situation. So that was on Monday, and then the team had an off day on Tuesday, so nobody was at the rink. And so then on Wednesday morning before practice, Backstrom wanted to talk with his teammates himself, and he wanted to be the one to break the news to them personally, and so he did that. So, you know what, like that had to be a really, really hard conversation. Everyone's really upset, obviously. You could tell, frankly, just by the interviews that the players did after practice, that they were all very emotional, with a lot of the veteran guys who have been there with Backstrom the whole time. Guys like John Carlson, TJ Oshie, and certainly Alex Ovechkin, who has literally been there the whole time. But like a lot of the veteran guys, they actually appeared to be choking back tears, honestly, during their interviews, which is definitely understandable. And you know what, like I said, it just sucks. It really does. Like, there's not much more that you can really say other than that it just sucks, right? Like, because to be clear, we are not talking about a guy who wants to retire, right? That would be one thing. But Nicklas Backstrom, he has done absolutely everything to try to get himself back into a playing condition where he can help his team. He has done absolutely everything. He's tried several different rehabilitation processes, and in fact, he's actually exhausted all of those different rehabilitation processes. That's what, led him to, he was basically left over with that last resort option of that hip resurfacing surgery. And he's actually, he has had multiple surgeries at this point as well. And like I said, including, as we all know, the hip resurfacing procedure that he had done last June. And so that was kind of his last option, a kind of a Hail Mary, if you will, as that is a surgery that no hockey player has ever successfully come back from. But it was his only option to try to get back on the ice for his team. And so he did it. And he did the extremely lengthy, extremely grueling recovery process that goes along with it. And by all accounts, he absolutely nailed that too. So that's really what makes this even more sad, even more tough to hear, is that, like I said, this isn't a guy who wants to retire, who's ready to retire. By all accounts, including his own, this is a guy who would do absolutely anything, give absolutely anything just to spend one more minute out there on the ice with his teammates. He has worked so fucking hard to make this comeback, and it is absolutely trash that the hockey gods appear to have other plans for him. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm kind of at a little bit of a loss for words here, just given that it is Nicklas Backstrom and I've been watching and cheering for him, like I said, for so long. It's not often that you find me at a loss for words, but here we are. Like I said, I mean, what else can you really say? It sucks, right? It sucks. His teammates are really upset. Fans are really upset. I'm sure Nicky himself is obviously really upset. And I did want to kind of highlight just how upset his teammates are by this news. Because I think it's important to highlight just how much he means to everyone around him. Because, he's not just an amazing hockey player. He is also, by all accounts, an amazing human being. And, that's been very evident by his teammates' reactions to the news and by stories being shared by fans as well, is that Nicklas Backstrom is not only one of the very best hockey players to have ever played this game, and he is a no-doubt Hall of Famer in my book, but he is also the very best teammate, the very best leader that you could ever ask for, the very best friend. The list goes on and on and on. And like I said, just all around the very best human being as well. So I do want to kind of highlight that, because I think probably knowing Nicklas Backstrom, that to him, those things like being the good teammate, being the good leader, being the good friend, being the good person, the good human being, those things would be definitely just as important, if not even more important, than being a good hockey player, right? If I know anything about Nicklas Backstrom, which I think I do at this point after, like I said, watching him and listening to him talk for the last 17 years. So I do also want to highlight as well, though, his on-ice accomplishments, because, those obviously do matter too. This is a hockey podcast, but as you can tell, I also just really love Nicklas Backstrom, the person. But yeah, like the on-ice stats, they aren't bad either, right? They're not bad at all. He is the franchise's all-time leader in assists, with a whopping 762 of them. And that is the most by any player in the entire NHL ever since Backstrom played his first NHL game 17 years ago. And obviously, that's a time frame that includes guys like Sidney Crosby, Patrick Kane. So pretty impressive for Nicklas Backstrom. And he is also second all time in franchise history in points with 1,033 of them. Behind only Alex Ovechkin. He is second all-time in franchise history in games played as well, with 1,105 of them. And again, that's behind only Alex Ovechkin. And, those two are on a very, very short list of players in NHL history who have played 1,000 plus games together as teammates. I was actually at that game in Calgary when they hit that milestone, when they accomplished that, and I was very emotional about it then, just as I am very emotional now. And when you look at players in NHL history who have played 1,000 plus games together and had 1,000 plus points each, that list gets even infinitely shorter. It is not a long list at all. And yeah, this has got to be just absolutely devastating for Alex Ovechkin as well, to see his best buddy have to go through this, to see him being forced out of the game that he loves early due to injury. Those two, like I mentioned, they have been absolute constants here for the last 2 decades. Like salt and pepper, like peanut butter and jelly, they've always been together, and they have always been making beautiful magic together. So it's rough, man. It really is. I don't really know what else to say. Like I said, I'm kind of at a loss for words here. But it sucks. It just sucks. But Nicklas Backstrom, he will always be a Stanley Cup champion. No one can ever take that away from him. No injury can take that away from him. And you know what? One of the memories that meant the most to me as a fan, do you guys remember back when our Caps had lost in back-to-back years to the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2016 and 2017? We had won the President's Trophy in both of those seasons, but then we had to sit there and watch helplessly as those bastards went on to win the Stanley Cup after knocking us out in the second round both times, I might add. Those were dark times as a Capitals fan. Do you guys remember how that felt? Do you remember how we all were feeling? It felt like the franchise's first Stanley Cup was so far away at that point. We were never, ever going to get it. We were never going to win it. And I think there were many Caps fans in that moment who literally felt as if they were going to go to their grave, 50 years later, never having seen their favorite hockey team hoist Lord Stanley's Cup. And that's a terrifying feeling as a sports fan. But just as we as fans were at our most unsure, Nicklas Backstrom was as sure as ever. He had faith in his teammates, he had faith in himself, and he delivered a promise to us Capitals fans after those back-to-back losses to the Penguins. If you recall, he stood there in front of reporters to face the music, and the reporters asked him if there was anything that he wanted to say to the Capitals fans who had waited so long for a championship and who had only ever known disappointment. And Nicklas Backstrom, he gets up there and he says, yeah, you know what? There is something that I would like to tell them. And he says, tell them we are going to do it. That's all. Just tell them we're going to do it someday and someday soon. You can tell them that. You can tell them, I promise them that we are going to win the Stanley Cup for them. And obviously, we all know the ending to that story, as Nicklas Backstrom and his Washington Capitals would win the Stanley Cup the very next season in 2018, and they would go through those very same Pittsburgh Penguins in the very same second round in order to do it. So ultimately, I think that that's a pretty good note to end on here. I mean, we could talk about some other stuff, like we could talk about the business side of this. We could talk about salary cap implications with Backstrom probably either going on long-term injured reserve, if not officially retiring. Because salary cap wise, I mean, it's obvious, it should be obvious to everyone, that just purely from a salary cap standpoint, this was actually very good news for the Caps, as they will get $9.2 million in salary cap space, which will obviously help them to improve the team a great deal. As Backstrom, with him being so injured, he really hasn't been able to provide much at all on the ice these last few seasons. He's just not himself at all anymore when it comes to his on-ice capabilities. He was always an automatic point-per-game player, right? Up until his hip really started bothering him a few seasons ago. You'll remember, he had the surgery on it, a different surgery, not the hip resurfacing surgery, but he had a different surgery on it previously. That seemed to fix it for a few seasons. He was back to normal. But then obviously a few seasons ago, it started really bothering him again. And he hasn't been himself really since then, as difficult as that is to say and to acknowledge. This season, for example, he only had just the 1 assist in 8 games played. So just purely from a salary cap standpoint, right? This is very good news cap-wise, and it's going to make the team a lot better roster-wise, production-wise. But I mean, come on. I can't be happy about that, right? Not at the expense of Nicklas Backstrom. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to feel that. I can't feel that. I love the guy. I was the one saying a few years ago when he signed his new contract extension at $9.2 million per season, and even after he's now slowed down so much because of his hip, I have always said that I do not care if the guy literally cannot skate anymore. If he wants to be out there, then we owe it to him to let him be out there and to go out on his own terms. We owed him that. And if it means that we have to suck for a few seasons because we can't afford to ice a decent lineup around him, then so be it. I don't care. We owed him that. That's how I feel. That's how I've always felt, is that he earned the right to go out on his own terms. And you cannot convince me otherwise. He's one of only 2 players who I will ever say that about. It's a very rare thing in sports, I think, where, you can really... you can't put the business side of things first in some cases. There are these rare cases with these rare players that are just so important to the franchise, so important to the fan base that, you can put the business aside for a minute as these guys finish up their careers. So, like I said, he's one of only 2 players who I will ever say that about, and I'm sure that you guys can probably guess who the other one is. But seriously, how can we be so spoiled as fans that we can't even stomach not winning the division title again for a few seasons just so the second greatest player in franchise history can finish out his contract and his career in the city that he has called home for 17 years, the city that he has been unwaveringly loyal to for 17 years. Seriously, guys, let's get a grip, okay? But yeah, there will be a time and a place to talk about all of the possibilities that this is going to create for the Caps, salary cap-wise, because they are going to have a ton of flexibility now and lots of opportunity to improve their roster. But you know what? This is not the time or the place for that now. It's just not. I know a lot of fans, myself included, were really upset by this Backstrom news yesterday, and so I don't want to do that now. I don't want to get into all of that nitty-gritty per se. This episode isn't about the future just yet. It is about the present, and in the present, as well as in the past, and as well as in the future, we love Nicklas Backstrom always and forever, and that ain't ever going to change. Man, I've said the word ain't like 15 times in this episode, I think. Can you tell that I'm upset? I don't even say ain't. I've barely ever said ain't in my life. I'm Canadian. We don't do ain't. It's just that I have had Nicklas Backstrom on my favorite hockey team for 17 years now. And so I am so goddamn lost and confused without him now that I don't even know what to do with myself right now. Like, I don't even know how to speak words the way that I usually do. I don't know, man. I'm just lost. Heavy sigh. All right, Caps fans, thus concludes my least favorite episode by far that I have ever had to make. I'm off to have a drink. I hope you will do the same. Let's try to keep it at least somewhat together, as our Washington Capitals have actually been playing pretty well lately. And, it would be a shame to see that come to an end because, they're all sad today too, for sure. Point being that they could probably use our support right now. So make some noise if you're at Capital One Arena tonight. I'm sure the boys would appreciate it. All right, babes, if you like the show, don't forget to tell all your friends, tell all your fellow Caps fans, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Thank you all so much for listening. Until next time, babes. And as always, let's go Caps.